This is the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 168 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to be talking about how to boost your blog with Blog Fixer. And I have on this episode with me, Katie and Chris, who are the owners of Blog Fixer. We're going to be diving into the different ways that you can actually improve your site in order to help with SEO, Google, and actually showing up when people are searching for your content. Now, before we dive into it, I want to make sure that you are all aware that they are giving away a site scan to each of you. So if you hop over to the show notes, you will be able to sign up for that. It is a $150 value that they are giving you with this free site scan. In the episode, I'm going to talk through what that site scan consists of. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what you can expect and how that actually can help you in order to improve your site traffic. All right, guys, let's dive in. All right, Katie and Chris, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome. How are you both?
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing great.
Yep. Thanks, Jenny. Good to be here.
Perfect. So I want to dive right in. Will you guys introduce yourselves and your business to my audience, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Chris, and I run the Blog Fixer. In a nutshell, we strive to automate and handle a lot of the technical, boring things that bloggers tend to dislike and allow them to spend more time on the things they love, like writing and interacting with their users, readers. And we do that by offering services that we've used to help over 3,000 WordPress sites at this point. Myself, my background's in software developer, and I used to work in the banking industry where I made home banking software, but then I got over into the WordPress scene when my wife Katie started her blog almost 10 years ago, or maybe more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I just passed 11 years, which is crazy. I'm a teacher by trade. And so, I started to teach people and help people be healthy. My blog is Kitchen Stewardship. We help families stay healthy if that would have been crazy. And I loved it. I loved interacting with people at first. Back in 2009, people actually commented right away. So there's this immediate feedback. It was really cool. But I hated the part where I was HTML error. What the heck? Or, all these technical rules and stuff I had to follow. And so my colleagues would always be jealous that I was married to a computer programmer because I could just look across the room and go, honey,
yes.
Can you do this for me?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I wish I had one of those in my back pocket so many times.
Yeah. And to be honest, a lot of the stuff she gave me, having a technical background, it wasn't that bad for me to do. It didn't take that much time. But then I think it was around 2011, Google came out with their rule about no follow, which was basically if you had a link that was monetized in any way, if it was sponsored or affiliated, that you had to add this no follow tag to it. And Katie came to me and said, I have a lot of links and all of a sudden this new rule comes, what are we going to do? And I'm looking for tools that would help, and kind of digging in. And I didn't really see anything at that time, and especially that wouldn't slow down the site. So I thought, hey, I know how to write code, so I'm going to write some code. And I created a little WordPress plugin to solve that problem for her.
Yeah, he was kind of known in his job as the automation wizard. If he could do, code something to save time, he would. So it was cool that he could apply that. And what ended up happening is the first time we ran it, he had no-followed over 21,000 links on my blog because I already had hundreds of posts. I cannot even imagine how long that would. It would have taken weeks and weeks because I was super part-time. I was just blogging at night when my kids were in bed, nap time. It would have been forever to touch every post. So that was literally amazing.
I can definitely understand. We'll get a little bit more into that in the interview, but I have a very similar situation and it was no follow links. So we will definitely go there. I also love the fact, Katie, that you are do you still teach?
No, I actually only taught in a classroom for 2 years. And then when we had kids, I came home, but I started blogging because we were still so young, and just quitting, I had a part-time for a couple of years after that. And we ended up a little bit in the red instead of the black. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do to make some money here?
Yes. So a lot of my audience, I have quite a few teachers or former teachers. So and of course I am a former teacher as well. I think that it's our natural instinct to want to teach.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about what are 3 myths that you feel bloggers can chill out about when trying to actually improve their site?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jenny, when you invited me on the podcast, I thought, what value can I bring to your listeners? And, I get a lot of emails, obviously, about SEO and technical questions. And I noticed that there's kind of some recurring themes and recurring confusion on some of these types of issues. So the first thing I thought I could talk about is I get a lot of people that email me that say, I ran my site through one of these page speed tools, right? Like Google Page Insights, and I got a terrible score. Like they give you this letter grade A through F like you used to get in grade school. And no one wants to get the D's or E's, and they email me and they're freaked out about that. Oh my gosh, my site must be terrible. Google's going to hate me. I just wanted to, kind of calm people down about that a little bit. That score doesn't necessarily mean that your page is loading all that slow. There's not a real big correlation there. You can certainly have a fast loading page with a poor score. And then on the other side of that, you could spend many hours getting that score up to a B or an A. And you'd have to do what I consider a lot of minutia to get it there. And you might not actually see a worthwhile increase in page speed. So to me, a far more important number is actually the load time of your page. I think that's more important. And even then, I take that number with a grain of salt because all the other tools, they calculate that number in different ways. They start and stop their timer at different times. So honestly, the best way to kind of gauge your page speed is just load your page and sit in front of it and put yourself in your reader's shoes. If it feels like it's taken too long, then you might want to look at speeding it up. But if it feels plenty fast to you, then I would say you don't have a big problem.
So it's nice to comfort people. I say he gets a lot of paranoid emails, they're like, oh my gosh, and people are freaking out. And it's just like we tell our kids, your grade in school or test taking is not a life skill. And right. So it's very similar. This test is not the be all end all of your blog. But I think you have 2 actual practical tips, right, Chris?
Yeah. I mean, it's still important to have a reasonably fast loading page. And I think there's kind of a couple places you can get more bang for your buck than digging into a lot of that minutia that comes back from those page speed tools. The first is find out what PHP version your site is running on. WordPress requires PHP. It's installed on every host. And it sounds like a technical thing, but really all you have to do is send an email to your host support and find out. If you're on version 5, you can get a nice performance boost by having them change to version 7. And it's almost always as easy as just having your host do that. Right now, I think the modern standard's 7.3, but if you're going from 5 to 7, you're going to see a nice little boost.
Okay. I just heard dozens of emails shooting off through cyberspace to all the hosts. They're like, oh no, Chris sent me.
That's right. But that's the kind of things that we don't think or know to do. So that is, like you said, it's a very simple tactical step to take so that you can improve speed just by reaching out to your host and asking them to make sure you know what version and how to update. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yep. And then the other tip I would give is, kind of speaking of hosts, if you're using one of these kind of what I call the bargain basement hosts, and there's several of them out there, I've literally worked on thousands of sites and hundreds of hosts, and I can tell you hosts matter. So if you're willing to upgrade your host, you can get a nice performance boost by moving from one of those bargain basement hosts to a better host. And not only are you probably going to be on better hardware and your site's going to perform better, but the support is generally better and they'll do more things for you. So they'll remove some of those speed bottlenecks. So you don't have to do anything. It's super easy. I do have a blog post up on that. You can find it at blogfixer.com/best host. And I'll walk through kind of why you want a better host and what my recommendations are.
Perfect. We're going to actually link to that in the show notes too, so that people can easily get over to that. Because that was going to be my next question. What are you going to give us those sites? Those hosts? Because I'm sure that's the next question that was coming out of their mind too. That's perfect. We'll make sure that we actually link to that in the show notes.
So myth number 2, I hear a lot. There's a recommendation out there just to reduce the number of plugins on your site. because that will make things run faster. And I do get a lot of emails that say, I must have way too many plugins because my site's not running as fast as I'd like it to be. I just want to point out that not all plugins are created equally. You can certainly have hundreds of plugins on a site that are well-coded and lightweight, and you're going to be fine. Then you can have that one behemoth plugin that slows things down. So I do get people that say, I know that your services are powered by a plugin, so I worry about that. And I just want to you got to understand that all plugins are not created equal. It is a little bit tricky to figure out where your slow ones are. I recently found a really cool tool that I'm excited to kind of dig into, and I plan on creating a series of blog posts on my site where I'm going to kind of go through the more popular plugins and what are faster and what are slower. So you can check that out at blogfixer.com in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And how cute is that? The tech guy is so excited to play with the plugin speed tool. Ooh.
Oh, it's a very cool tool.
But it is important because there's such plugin paranoia. Like people freak out. Like, oh my gosh, I have to delete plugins right now. There's not a blanket plugins are evil rule, right?
I always give the recommendation, it's never worth getting rid of functionality that you really like or your readers really like in order to, get that speed increase, because it might not be that much.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great suggestion. And you're right, there is paranoia about plugins for sure, because I'm sure I've said that myself.
So then myth number 3, the last one I want to talk about is because people know that we help people with no-follow quite a bit. I do get the emails occasionally that say, I want to be really safe. Let's just no-follow all my external links to prevent that Google penalty. And I think you probably wouldn't get a Google penalty, but it's just not good for your SEO to do that.
Right.
Google uses those external links, those followed links where you're linking to determine a lot about your site, and they use it in a metric they call trust rank, and that in turn factors into where your site comes back in the search rankings. So it's always important to link to good quality resources, and I've heard it described as Google's determining the neighborhood of your site by who you link to. So any of the external links that are followed, they consider those your neighbors, and they learn a lot more about your site that way. So it's always important to make sure you do have high quality followed links on all of your articles.
Mm-hmm. Because it's weird and freaky if someone's like living in a hut in the middle of a field 5 miles from anybody, right? And it's the same thing online. If you're not connected to anybody, it seems like you might be doing something underhanded, or you have no idea where to get information from, right? So outbound links are important. You just need to figure out which ones to follow the rules.
Right.
No, absolutely. And for those of you that are listening that are wondering, why are we talking about what does no follow mean? Because most of my audience, I would say, would definitely recognize what that is. But for those that are wondering, no follow is just when it's something sponsored, you've been paid in order to write something. And that's when you want to make sure that you no follow it, which is what we're talking about, just to have some clarification for those that are listening. They're kind of like, well, what are we talking about here?
Right.
We can make sure we have that clarification. All right. So if we're constantly trying to stay up to date with the latest algorithm updates, how can we actually improve our blog traffic with technical fixes?
Yeah, that's a popular one right now because they're having all kinds of algorithm changes. I think it's important to understand that in today's SEO, there really isn't this magic bullet or this one stop, like I'm just going to organize things this way and get a bunch more traffic. Unfortunately, everything is important. And that includes the content site is kind of first and foremost on that. You need to make sure your articles are answering whatever question your readers have. Why did they come to your site in the first place? What did they type into Google? So the better you can answer that question and the more thoroughly you can answer that question, that's right at the top of your list. That's why you'll see a lot of recommendations where people say write longer posts, because Google wants to see that you're thoroughly answering the question. It's not all about word count, obviously, but the better your post is and the better it's answering the question, the better it's going to perform. But then on top of that, you also need all the other stuff, right? You need to have a clean theme. You need to have a reasonably fast loading site. You need to make sure you don't have any technical errors or HTML errors especially that result in display issues. And then the other thing Google is really focusing on is reader experience. Google's looking at how is a reader behaving when they go to your site. Do they come to your site and click on links and what's expected happens? In other words, does it always open in a new tab or the current tab? Are there weird pop-ups? Are there too many ads? So all these things kind of factor in, and you got to be good at all of them. we can help a lot more on the technical side of the Blog Fixer. Obviously, unfortunately, I can't teach my program to write cool content for you yet, but certainly the technical side are where we can help and just kind of give you that well-rounded, high-quality site.
Yeah, so like one easy to understand example, Chris mentioned display issues, which is technical speak for like you go to some people's sites and they have random question marks showing up every other sentence, or they have weird little code pieces that have shown up over the years, and it makes the reader lose trust. It makes me think, these people don't really know what they're doing. So maybe they don't know what they're talking about in their content, and I'm not going to tend to, go to that site as a resource regularly. So that kind of little junky stuff is the things that we hate doing, but he gets excited about.
Right. And those are fixes that you make as well. Like if, let's say my site that I had for 10 some odd years, had those kind of things because we had moved from different site, from one host to another host or whatever it might be. So something like that are things that technically Blog Fixer can go through and actually find.
Yes. One of my early clients, actually, Angie, had a site, and after we were done fixing her, she said, just thank you so much, because now I feel much more confident sharing these things to other people.
Yes.
Because her backlog was much better presented.
And what was it? She had moved from Blogger to WordPress, and on like half of her pictures got like borked, right? What was the problem?
Yeah, among other things. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there were just a whole bunch of compatibility and especially image issues where she was like, I can't even share this. Nothing's even pinnable. But yeah, the Blog Fixer was able to clean it all up without her needing to do anything.
Yes. No, and I can definitely relate to that because that's exactly what's Blogger to WordPress. And all of a sudden you said question marks and I'm like, oh my God, the question marks.
I didn't even know that was a personal example. Sorry.
So one of the things that I constantly hear bloggers talking about are site audits. What does your site audit that you do consist of?
Yeah, sure. So to back up a second, so a site audit is basically checking your site for its weaknesses, identifying those, and then figuring out where it can be improved, right? So all site audits kind of, if they're well done, they're going to have two sides. They're going to have the site audit of the content and the site, kind of the technical issues on the site. And just our site audit, we call our site scan, and it involves scanning your site for about 16 different common SEO / technical issues. And then on top of that, we include what we call our content audit spreadsheet, which is a spreadsheet, and it's a holistic view. It's a breakdown of all your posts and any issues they may have. So we have things like word count in there, so you can kind of tell. Generally, a low word count post is going to maybe not be so good at thoroughly answering whatever question it was created to answer. We're going to look at, maybe you're missing images on that post. We could aesthetically improve that by, adding some images. And then we're going to look at the technical issues and say, are there any HTML problems on this post? Maybe there's a link on there that should be no-filed that isn't. So it gives you this really nice overview of your site so you can selectively improve things.
Mm-hmm. And it's a post-by-post breakdown. I know that some people are afraid of spreadsheets, but if you really know about spreadsheets, they're really the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow because there can be so much information. So my team and we use our content audit spreadsheet all the time as we're working on old posts. And one of the first things we did was to sort by word count, like Chris mentioned, and find, any posts that were under 300 words. Mostly we just deleted them. Like anything between 300 and 500, we look to say, do we need to rewrite and extend this content, combine it with something else, redirect it to a similar post. And so within a week, we were able to completely delete in 410, 100 of my 1600 posts. And then another 50 to 100 were quickly dealt with, which is such a nice jump start, right? Because when you're looking at all of your old content, I always say it's like digging into the closet and seeing the things you haven't seen for years and organizing them. So if your grandma opened the closet, you wouldn't be embarrassed, right? So that's what digging into your old content is often like. And so it's just amazing to be able to get some of those quick wins and to just be able to find, how else would you find, your short posts? It would take forever. So we use that content on a spreadsheet all the time.
I think a lot of people can understand that it almost gives you a path in which you can take instead of looking at it as this big, overwhelming, oh my goodness, I need to do some improvements on my SEO. Where do I start? It now gives you that path, that journey to actually take, and it can be less overwhelming for sure. So I, for one, definitely appreciate the fact that you separate it that way and give us a direction as to where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually started working pretty closely with SEO expert #Jeff, which some of your listeners may be familiar with, and he actually includes our content audit spreadsheet in some of his very thorough SEO audits that he does. So it really is good stuff.
Very good.
And if anyone's ever had an SEO audit done, by one of those professionals, it's like thousands of dollars. And what you end up with is not actually anything fixed, but usually like a 30 to 100 page document about your site, which is like your to-do list textbook for the next year. So it's a nice jumpstart to get a few things taken off that list. Technically, then like at least you can start focusing on the content and like you said, sort of have a roadmap and an order.
Yes. No, absolutely. So a couple of years ago, I actually had a plugin break, and that marked all of my sponsored links as no follow. And as the girl that's known to be teaching how to do sponsored content, this is a bad thing. And then when the plugin broke, it turned all those links into do follow links, and I probably went to Google jail. I manually attempted to mark all the links correctly, and it took me over 12 hours, and I think I might have gotten through maybe 20 posts. Does BlogFixer have a fix for correcting these links?
Yeah, absolutely. So like we mentioned before, kind of no follow was where we got our start, right? So we're really good at that. And we've overturned literally dozens of these Google penalty, Google jail issues for bloggers. But I think your issue, Jenny, kind of highlights an interesting way that different plugins will solve problems. There's kind of two ways a plugin can change content on your site. And the one you were using used what's called a filter, which means that the change actually happens when the post is being viewed, and that change is never saved. So there's a couple of reasons this can be a problem. First and foremost is that change needs to be made every time the post is viewed. Because it's never saved, it has to be made again and again and again. And of course, every time it's made, that's costing you some server resources and potentially some load time. So that's problem number one with a filter. And then problem number two is if that plugin goes away, which obviously happened in your case. So that means if maybe you accidentally deactivate it, maybe it's not compatible with the latest WordPress update, maybe they release a bad update and it breaks, then that change goes away too. And as in your case, you probably didn't even notice, but Google did. Right?
They came knocking on my door.
Penalty. So that's why from the beginning, when I created my software, the Blog Fixer, that I decided to make the change where it's permanently done in the database. So it's really no different than if you went into your post manually and edited it and added no follow in there and then saved it. The change only needs to happen once. All you got to do is do that, 21,000 times, Katie, right?
Right.
But we do that much faster, obviously. But it never needs to be done again. It's not dependent on software. You can delete my plugin, and your change is going to remain forever, and you're not in any danger of getting that penalty or that change going away.
Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just thinking of starting a podcast, you need to listen to Buzzcast from the folks at Buzzsprout. Here we go! Buzzcast covers everything a podcaster should know, from marketing strategies and how to make money from your podcast to the latest and greatest tech and industry insights to keep you on the cutting edge. Follow Buzzcast by clicking the link in the description or go to buzzcast.buzzsprout.com and keep podcasting.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Now, how does Blog Fixer make those changes for bloggers? So let's say, for example, I came to you after that no follow incident, as I like to call it. What would then happen? Like, how would we have gone about making the changes?
Right. Sure. So early on, I realized that I needed to give my fixes away as services. initially when I first created my company, I thought, I'm a software guy. I'm going to sell software. But it wasn't very long. I was testing my fixes on Katie's colleagues, as we mentioned, and I realized that bloggers just don't have much time. Obviously, witnessing that firsthand with my wife, they don't have much time to do things to learn new software. Especially, they don't have any interest in it. So I realized that I was far better off in offering services. So that's what we do going forward. So everything we do, all of our fixes are delivered as 100% done for you services. And our goal is and has been to require as little of the blogger's time as possible. So it's the Blog Fixer team that installs our software, configures it, runs it, and then sends you a report. And hopefully it takes less than 5 minutes of your time overall.
Which is a savings over 12 hours if anyone is doing the math.
A ton. And not only the time, but also the frustration and the stress and then the Googling of how do I fix this and how do I fix such a rabbit hole. It's never 12 hours. It's more like 12 years.
Yeah, for sure. One of our early clients, Heather, put it very interesting. She said, every time I sit down to research, I just can't focus if there's laundry to be folded and there's Legos all over the floor. So we're kind of metaphorically picking up those Legos and folding that laundry for you and taking some of that technical thinking off your plate so you can really just focus on the research and the writing, that I'm assuming you got into blogging for the first place.
Right. No, absolutely. So I know that many of my listeners get nervous about giving back-end credentials to others. And I know that that's part of the process, that we have to be able to give you the back-end credentials that you can install the software. How do you keep it secure? How does that work?
Yeah, I actually think it's great that people get nervous about giving their credentials out. You definitely don't just want to give, the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, over to anybody. And I would encourage anyone giving their credentials out to someone to do work for them to ask them, how are they going to store that password and keep them safe? Coming from the banking world as I did, they always drilled into our head, security, security, security. And we used to talk about PII, or personally identifiable information, and how that can never be sent through like emails or stored insecurely, right? So never store it. That would be like social security numbers, date of birth, and then definitely passwords. Never send them via email, never store them in a Word document or a Google document. So I brought all that over with me when I started the Blog Fixer from day one. So we're only storing passwords in encrypted password safe files. That's the first thing I teach my team when I bring them on board, and they hear it constantly. So, it's really a big deal that people are trusting us with their credentials, and we definitely do everything to keep them safe. And then on top of that, we have very detailed instructions when you do sign up for one of our services about how you can send those credentials to us safely. We mentioned never to send them, never just email us the password. There's more secure ways of doing that, and we have all that in place.
Yes.
This is another part where I kind of stepped in and said, Chris, people don't want to read very much. Let's do bullets. Let's do a screencast. So, we lay it out incredibly simply so that it takes like 90 seconds of your time, because you don't have to think. You just follow step by step, getting that over to him. And then at the end of the process.
Yeah. So at the end of the process, we send you a report. Your service is all done. And then there's a reminder there, please remove our access. And that's kind of a bonus tip. I'd encourage everyone just to today, go look at your WordPress site, go to the user section, and anyone that has admin access, think to yourself, do they still need it? And if they don't, get rid of it. You can always put it back later, but that's just a great security tip to, keep yourself safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And bonus tip number 2, if you just heard us say don't send passwords by email and you've ever done that, stop that right now. Make sure that your entire team, any VAs, know to only store passwords, not even on their computer, definitely not online. We have friends who stored passwords in a Google Sheet, and their PayPal account, of course, got hacked, and along with everything else. So that, security is not exciting, but it's really, really, really important.
Yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely. Now, how long does the entire process take?
Yeah, so we kind of have the advantage over, some of the SEO experts out there that do these thorough manual SEO audits. I heard they're booking 6-7 months down the line right now. We're all powered by software, so we have a much quicker turnaround, we strive very hard to get anyone that signs up with us completed in 1 week. And that kind of depends on how long our service queue is at the time, but that's our goal, about a week.
Yes. And like 5 minutes of the blogger's time.
Right. And honestly, I don't even think it was 5 minutes of my time when I did it with you guys last year. It was everything was systematized. It was very clean, very easy to know what I needed to do, how I needed to do it. And it was a quick turnaround where I was able to look and see what needed to be fixed and to have it taken care of for sure.
Great. That is definitely our goal.
There you go. So you are offering a free site scan to my listeners, which is $150 value. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to link to that in the show notes. How else can people actually get in touch with you for your services? I would say definitely start with the site scan. I mean, it's free up until May 1st. So you'd be silly not to take advantage of that. But if, let's say, they come to you, they listen to the podcast and it's after May 1st, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. So just a reminder, that site scan, so we're going to check for the 16 common SEO/error problems and let you know if you have any of those and how many you have. We're also going to include our holistic content audit spreadsheet that gives a great breakdown post by post of where you can focus your time and energy on improving your site. Outside of that, definitely see the show notes to go through the link so you can get the site scan for free. But other than that, everything we have is over at blogfixer.com. You can get in touch with us through that. We've also recently, in the last about a month or so, we launched our Facebook page, facebook.com/theblogfixer. We're trying really hard to add a bunch of value there. So we're constantly updating it with resources and interesting articles we find pertaining to blogging. So basically, make sure to check that out. And then other than that, you can always email us at info@blogfixer.com.
Perfect. No, you guys, thank you both so much for taking the time to come on. I just think that the service is so important. And I know that when others I had shared about it, they were really hesitant about the back end. And I said, no, wait, you don't understand. I know, Chris and Katie, no, just give them your information. And I think that definitely comes across in this interview. You guys are fabulous. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us, Jenny.
Of course. All right. Well, there you have it. Clearly, Chris and Katie are fabulous. I'm so excited about the site scan that they are offering to all of you for free. All you have to do is hop over to the show notes. So if you're driving, don't try to do it while you're driving. Make sure when you get home, you take advantage of that. Go to the show notes and you will be able to grab that. Now, again, if you are listening to the podcast, you just need to go to jennymelrose.com/podcast and you'll see the latest episode with Blog Fixer up on my site. So you can make sure you go to the show notes there and we will have that free site scan for you to be able to sign up for. That is $150 value. And as you heard, Katie's a former teacher. Chris is fabulous. He understands the tech side. Who wishes they had a husband that understood the tech side? I know I certainly wish mine understood that. It would have helped so much in the beginning, but that's a totally different side now. So make sure though that you do take advantage of that. It's kind of like having that husband there that can take a look at your site and look at it for free to let you know what you can possibly fix in order to improve the speed of it, the overall user experience. If you guys are listening in, I would love it right now if you took a screenshot of where you're listening, whether you're driving, whether you are out for a walk with the dog, wherever it might be, and put it up on Instagram stories. You can tag me at Jenny_Melrose. And I will be making sure to reply back to you and answer any questions that you might have. I personally have had the site scan done by Blog Fixer, and it was one of the best things that I did last year. I plan on doing another one this year. All right, guys, until next time, I will talk to you all then.